Coach says your pitch limit is 89.
And then I'll take the mound in the second inning.
Hi, everyone. This is Will O'Toole for Park Ridge Sports History, welcoming you to another edition. This week, as we head into Halloween, I'd like to focus on the World Series between the Houston Astros and the Atlanta Braves. And I have to say a special shout out once again to Howard Fredericks, who really helps me produce this show and always brings me some creative ideas. This week, though, going into the show, I knew I was going to do something on baseball and obviously with the Astros. And sometimes when you're thinking about a show, you go from one place and then you start to do some research and it kind of leads you down a different path. So with the Braves and the Astros meeting for the first time in the World Series, actually, I couldn't believe this. I was stunned when I realized that the Braves, it was made note to me that the Braves hadn't been in the World Series in 22 years. And the only reason I say that is because it just seems that the Braves have been at the top of the Eastern Division since about, since the years of Maddox and Smoltz and Glavine. So you're going back to maybe the late 80s and the early 90s. It just seems like it was always just pencil in the Braves to win the National League East. I couldn't believe that they hadn't been in a World Series since the turn of the century. Incredible. With that being said, I was just really going through their listing, and it is an incredible record because when they do move from Milwaukee to Atlanta, they do have some success right away, winning, of course, that National League West division in 1969. I guess you could consider that a half pennant, with Orlando Cepeda and, of course, Henry Aaron and Phil Niekro leading the charge. They did go down to the Mets in a 3-game sweep. And, of course, we all know the Mets won with that miracle Met team of the 69 World Series. After that, though, it is barren in terms of the Braves and any kind of postseason success until the 1982 season when, ironically, Joe Torre is brought along, a one-time Milwaukee Brave and Atlanta Brave. And then, of course, he had the unbelievable misfortune of being traded from the Braves to the Cardinals prior to the 69 season and missing out on not just the Cardinal run in 67 and 68, but then the Braves division in 69. People didn't realize this, but Joe Torre had the same kind of reputation as Ernie Banks, never getting to the postseason. And really, he wins the 82 division for the Braves, leading the Braves to a 89 and 73 mark. That was actually sparked by that unbelievable start, the 13-0 start to the season. You take that away and they finish kind of a, plebeian 76 and 73. Regardless, he does win. Then they don't see or sniff postseason until 91. And then they go on a rampage, the Braves. 91, of course, 94 with the strike. That kind of stops that short. They win 3 in a row. Then ready for this, from 95 until 2005, they're in the postseason. That's 11 seasons. So you're talking about 14 straight years minus the strike where they make it. Then they kind of have a stretch of where they play pretty good ball, but not good enough to get into the postseason. They lose in the NLDS. Then they don't make it in 2011. Then they get back for 2 more years. Then they go barren again. And then they have been in the postseason for the last 4 years. And now, of course, they've gotten to the promised land of making the World Series the first time. I couldn't believe this since 1999 when they lost to the Yankees in 4 straight. Unbelievable. And, of course, I've always made mention of this. You wonder this, and this is the big if. Had the Braves won in 96, remember, they were up 2-0 before the Yankees ventured down to Fulton County Stadium and win that unbelievable couple of games there. with Leyritz hitting a 3-run bomb. And, of course, Andy Pettitte really spinning a 1-0 gem. And I've gotten into arguments with Yankee fans. I'm not even a Yankee fan. And I always tell them how brilliant really was Pettitte. And they always bring up the Arizona series. I get it. But you think about it, and I've maintained this. If Pettitte doesn't spin that 1-0 game, maybe we're not talking about the core four and the Yankee dynasty of the 90s. Maybe we're talking about the Braves really being the true buzzsaw, because the Braves lose after winning the first 2 in Yankee Stadium. They lose 4 straight to the Yankees. Charlie Hayes, of course, making the last out for the Yankees in the 96 series. The pop-up to him at playing third base. Anyway, the Yankees go on the run, not the Braves. The Braves continue to be frustrated. And in 99, they get swept by the Yankees. And then they really never sniffed the World Series again until just last night when they defeat the Dodgers. It's kind of incredible. And when you think about it, when I was growing up, and of course, I always gear these, I got to be very honest with you, probably to the baby boomer generation with the baseball cards and always talking about the past. And of course, it is sports history. But the Braves, really, aside from 69, were a mediocre organization in Atlanta until really 82. Kind of you can see maybe the Braves start to build something in 82. I know it takes them another 9 years to get to the postseason. Regardless, they were really a mediocre franchise. And now they're the ones really that everyone should be modeling in the NL. Maybe not the Dodgers, because obviously the Dodgers being in one of the largest markets with money abundant and all the rest of it, really is the Braves that should be modeled after in the National League. Not the Cubs, not the Oakland A's, but the Braves, because they are showing they can rebuild, they get better, and they have the longevity of staying good and always being in that position. I mean, let's face it, the Mets, outside of maybe the year 2000, really have been spanked by the Braves. They've been owned by them. And they can't get over the hill unless they get past the Atlanta Braves. Same thing with basically the Phillies and the Nationals. I know the Nationals did win a World Series, and of course the Phillies did win a World Series in all of this time. But I think you know what I'm saying, that the Braves, for longevity, have really shown the National League how it's done. And really, they keep their players home. They don't really have that big splash of a free agent. They just rebuild and just continue to improve. Anyway, I'm going off on my other tangent here, but really what I wanted to focus on, and this is what I was thinking about, was the Astros making it, of course, and realize this, that the Astros, when they were in the National League, were just always a mediocre team. But I figured I might as well put this up here for now. And, of course, the cartoon of the week has everything to deal with what I'm going to talk about with the World Series, too, if I remember. But anyway, here are the original logos of the well, I shouldn't say the original logos, but these were the logos for the 62 season for both the Milwaukee Braves, who moved to Atlanta in 66, and the Houston Colt 45s, who were known as the Colt 45s before the Astros. And the only reason they really made the change was not because of political correctness, but because they were moving into the Astrodome. And, of course, the owners thought it would be a good idea to market the team as the Houston Astros playing in the Astrodome. Kind of made sense. I do love the logo, and I apologize. I didn't have the ink, but, of course, it's orange and blue. And, of course, the Reds and basically a dark blue for the Milwaukee Braves and then the Atlanta Braves. These are great logos. In fact, I even have this, and we're going to get into the top of the things. Here's the Houston Colt 45 pennant. I'm kind of hiding some of the players. And, of course, I think some of you guys who have played softball and stuff will every once in a while see somebody who is interested in the old baseball caps. They'll wear the Colt 45 one. And, of course, that was in orange. I do apologize. I wanted to get these in color when it comes to computers, here's what I do. I call my son and say, Matthew, help me out. And usually he comes to my assistance. He just wasn't around today. Anyway, what I'd like to focus on is I was going to go down this path. I named the four greatest Astros or the four greatest Atlanta Braves, but I think it's kind of fun, and I will do that maybe in a future show, kind of like the Mount Rushmore. And of course, you'd probably have to put Jose Altuve up there. You might include, let's say, Nolan Ryan. You might include Don Wilson, Larry Dierker, Joe Morgan, Jimmy Wynn, and of course, players of today. Don't get me wrong. And of course, how can I forget Craig Biggio, Hall of Famer, all right, and Jeff Bagwell, Hall of Famer. All right, so we can have a discussion argument there. I was going to go that route. And then I was like thinking, wait a minute, I'd love to see what happened in his 62 season, since that was the Astros' first year, or Colt 45's first season in the National League. And here's what I did. I went to the very first game both teams played each other. It was April 27th, 1962. It was amazing. It was played April 27th, and there are just so many weird things about this game that I really had to bring this to you. It was played in Houston at Colt Stadium, and I never saw a game at Colt Stadium, but from what I understand, it was thick grass and weeds, more weeds than grass. There are all kinds of animals and rodents and vermin running around through the outfield. I know, obviously, it was hot. It was played outdoors. Mosquitoes and bugs and insects of all kinds really bothered the players. And this was one of the reasons why the Astros decided to move indoors. And that was to provide for a better baseball element, not just for the fans, but the players as well. Did they have success in the Astrodome? That was really a dump. I have to be very honest with you. The two All-Star games in there were boring. The 68 one wrecked Harmon Killebrew. He pulled a hamstring muscle, stretching for a double play ball in the very first inning. And it was the game's only run, 1-0. Willie Mays came around, I believe, from second base to score the first run, the go-ahead run, and the winning run. So they only had a 1-0 game for the 68 All-Star. Kind of typified what used to go on in the Astrodome. In fact, I remember that, and this is all because of Bill James and all of his research. The Astros really, during the late 70s, early 80s, had some pretty good hitters that were ruined by the air conditioning, the cold air and atmosphere, and also the lighting and just that echoey. You felt like you were in a dungeon type of thing with the Astrodome. And they really had some good line drive, good gap hitters on those teams, led by, I always thought, Jose Cruz, because James had done a study and said, man, when the Astros go on the road, their hitting really is very good. Lots of doubles. They can really take advantage of their speed. In many respects, they had really good power. The Astrodome was definitely built for pitching, etc. So I guess it's good and it's bad for the franchise. The problem is, I would say it was more bad because they didn't win there. Once leaving for Minute Maid, they've had some success. In the early 90s with Bagwell and Biggio, they would come up short, usually losing to the Braves or the Cardinals, but at least they were having success. Anyway, that 62 game was a 9-inning affair. You're going to laugh when I say this, but it ended 2-1. The winning pitcher was a guy by the name of Bob Shaw. I do have a picture of him. And Yankee fans probably might even remember him, but I couldn't believe when I saw this. Bob Shaw was one of the league leaders in ERA in 1962. And, of course, the real leader of that team was Sandy Koufax, you can see. Koufax was the ERA leader that year. And Bob Shaw was the winning pitcher. He was 2-1, and for the Milwaukee Braves. Here's what he did for his career. He's not a bad pitcher. I just remember he won 108 games, lost 98, but he had a 3.52 ERA, Bob Shaw. He did win 18 games for the 59 White Sox, and of course, the Go-Go Sox go to the pennant and lose to the Dodgers 4-2. So he did lead the league in winning percentage that year. He won 15 games from Milwaukee and makes the All-Star team in 1962. He came over from the Kansas City A's, and he had a 2.8 ERA. The interesting thing is, in 1963, his ERA goes down to 2.66, but he only wins 7 games and has 11 setbacks. He does get traded to the Giants. He goes 16-9 with the Giants. Pretty good. And so you can see he kind of bounced around in his winning percentage. I would say this, definitely a valuable pitcher. I was kind of amazed that he only had an 18.6 WAR for a career in which he won 18 games. He had double-digit wins, 1, 2, 3, 4, 7 times in his career. Now, his last 3 years, age 34, he was 3-11. If you take those years away, he's 105, or that year away, he's 105 and 87. His winning percentage with that year in is 524. So you take those away, probably has like a 530. 535 winning percentage. That's not bad. And he did play with the White Sox. It seemed like this, his career. Spent it with Detroit. Detroit maybe didn't know what to do with him. They traded him to the White Sox. And, of course, Al Lopez, who built the 54 Indians and probably knew something about pitching. Well, he goes over there, and in his second year with the White Sox, wins 18 games. In fact, with the White Sox, ready for this? He won 46. He won 50 games and lost only 39. 58-39, not too bad. And, of course, my math may be wrong. But, again, ERA, he finished with a 2.8 ERA for Milwaukee that year. Now, funny thing is, this game, ready for this? Here are some of the players that were involved. I'm going to start with the other pitcher was Bob Shantz. And, of course, many Yankee fans know who Bobby Shantz was. Bobby Shantz had a 34.7 ERA with a 119-99 record and a 3.38 ERA. Almost double what Bob Shaw's was. And this is what, and I will do a show on WAR because, as you know, I enjoy looking at the WAR. I think it can be a valuable tool in judging players' values. But I am still amazed at, let's say, to me, the discrepancies. And here is another example. You have a guy, Bobby Shantz, 119-99. And as I said, Bob Shaw, almost a similar record, slightly lower winning percentage. Bobby Shantz with the 51-52 Philadelphia A's won 18 and 24 games. In fact, in 1952, Shantz won 24 games, had a lead, had the winning percentage. He led the league in winning percentage with a 774. He did, when he came to the Yankees in 1957, led the Yankees in ERA, actually led the league in ERA with a 2.45. But here's the interesting thing. With the Yankees, that was his only double-digit winning season. And he goes 11-5 for the 57 Yankees. Ironically, they play the Braves in the World Series, lose to them, but they come back the next year. He's on the pennant-winning Yankees. He goes 7-6. His ERA jumps to 3.36. And of course, the Yankees secure the World Series in 7 games against the Milwaukee Braves. Interesting, though. To me, he has only 3 seasons in which he gets double digits. He has that great season with the Philadelphia A's where he goes 24-7. But basically, when you think about it, that's 1/6 of his wins. To me, and this is what I'd love to talk to the people who kind of put together the war. I'm just curious. I'm not saying it's not a valuable tool to use. I'm just curious the formula that's used, because Shantz and Shaw, very similar. Yes, Shantz has that unbelievable season, 24-7, but I can look through the Cy Young Award winners. I'm thinking of Mike McCormick for one, or Bob Welch, who almost won 30 games for the A's way back when in 1990 and stuff, who had that one great season, and it seems to be the majority of their wins or the biggest thing. To me, if I had both pitchers, I might take Shaw over Shantz just because of his body of work with teams, with various teams. Now, I know Shantz, of course, won 42 games with the Philadelphia A's in back-to-back seasons, 51 and 52. And we know the A's weren't that good. Obviously, they were terrible. But still, when he gets to a good team, and it wasn't like he went to the Yankees. He's age 31, does make the All-Star team in 1957 with the Yankees. But you would think at an 11-5 year, and you can say this, well, maybe he had quite a few no decisions because he did start 30 games. These are 16 decisions. I'll even give you that. Maybe he had 4 or 5 no decisions that might bring him up to 16. But then he never seems to have the success that you're expecting. Yes, he is over 500 for his entire Yankee career, 7-6, 7-3, and 5-4. But remember, those Yankee teams all won pennants. They went to the World Series 3 of the 4 years he's with the Yankees. All right. Just an interesting thing, argument and all the rest of it. Ready for this? Other guys involved in the game. Well, first of all, since I'm talking about the pitchers, in this particular game, ready for this? Everybody, I couldn't believe how many Bs. And remember the Astros, and this is all, it's all coming around in full circle. Remember the Astros had so many Bs in the in the 90s and stuff with Bergman, Biggio, Bagwell, and all the rest of it. And, well, in this particular game, everybody's first name in the pitching involved began with B. You had Bob Shaw, who was the winner. He went the distance. Ready for this? 9 innings, only 4 hits. He walked nobody and struck out 6. This is what I mean about this guy. He was pretty good. Now, he is playing the Astros. They only won 60-some-odd games. But the losing pitcher, Bobby Shantz, went 6 innings, allowed only 1 earned run, walked 2, struck out 5. Bob Bruce relieved him, and then Bobby Tiefenauer relieved Bruce. Those two spun 3 innings of scoreless ball. So in the game, 18 innings, there were 2 earned runs in the entire game. And actually, here's where we go. One of the runs was scored by a home run by a fellow by the name of Jim Pendleton, who was a left fielder for the Milwaukee Braves. Pendleton hit 20 lifetime home runs. Ready for this? He has a negative 0.9 WAR. But this is what he actually did. In 62, he spent his first couple of years, he played for Houston in 62, then is dealt to Pittsburgh, plays for Cincinnati, comes back at the age of 38. Has not a bad season. Hits 246, has 8 homers, 36 RBIs in 117 games, gets 12 doubles and 2 triples. I apologize. Pendleton spent his early career with the Braves and ironically finished his career with the Houston Colt 45s, 1962. But it's amazing. Again, it's the full cycle. It's just wild. He probably is. Now I'm going to have to look this up as I'm looking at this. He's probably the first African-American player in the Colt 45's history. All right. So Jim Pendleton, it's funny. There were quite a few black players for the Braves, not just Aaron, but you had Bill Burton, I think, or Brutton. And of course they had Tommy Aaron. Where did I go with Tommy Aaron? They had a guy by the name of Mac Jones. I remember him playing for the Montreal Expos. But those Milwaukee Braves had quite a few players from the Negro Leagues that they went in and really helped them really compete and contend. Oh, here he is. I have him right next to a future manager. And this was the other thing. This is a nice segue as well. Here's Mac Jones, who I have to tell you, Jones played with Milwaukee. And ready for this. Here is the lineup for the Milwaukee Braves that day. It started with leadoff hitter Tommy Aaron, who played left and first base. Kind of odd, and I do have that. Here's Tommy Aaron. I can't recall whether this is 62 baseball card, but Aaron played with his brother Hank. Interestingly enough, Hank Aaron is not in the lineup for this game. When I was doing the Milwaukee Braves, I'm saying to myself, in 62, Aaron played almost every game every year. Maybe he would play maybe 152 of 162 or 158 of the 162. Remember, we talked in past shows how in 69 he was kind of out for a couple of weeks, but still has an unbelievable MVP type season. In fact, I think he finished like 8th in the voting and probably should have been a little higher based on WAR. There it is again. But Tommy Aaron was on that team. He batted first. They had a guy by the name of Mac Jones, who I remember playing for the Montreal Expos. And this is a 71 card, by the way. I was going to put the 71, but this is a better one. He had some pop. Excuse me. I apologize. Hank Aaron did play. How did I miss Aaron here? He's actually playing center field. That's what I wanted to make sure of. So you had Aaron Jones, Aaron Matthews, Eddie Matthews, a Hall of Famer. Joe Adcock played first base as well. Harry Bedell pinch ran in the game. Frank Bolin, Del Crandall, Roy McMillan, and Bob Shaw. All right. Aaron did play in that game. He actually has an RBI. At the time, Aaron's only hitting .231, but he has a slugging percentage of .404. Aaron had a base hit. Actually, he had a triple off Bobby Shantz in that game. But Aaron Jones, Aaron, Eddie Matthews, Hall of Famer. And I was amazed how great Eddie Matthews really was. You could actually make an argument, Matthews or Schmidt. I know that probably most quote-unquote baseball experts probably go towards Schmidt. But Matthews was a great player. He was a great player and probably, and I know this sounds crazy, would be more appreciated playing today than he did in the 50s. I know that sounds crazy. And, of course, Matthews, everybody who is a big Sports Illustrated fan knows that that he made one of the early or the first cover of Sports Illustrated magazine. He was the hitter on the cover of the 1954 Sports Illustrated cover. But they had Joe Adcock, a guy named Frank Bolin playing second base, Del Crandall, Roy McMillan, and Bob Shaw. I couldn't believe that this game had, ready for this, they had, in addition to the two managers managing the team, they would have future managers, Eddie Matthews, Del Crandall, Roy McMillan, Joey Amalfitano, Bob Lillis, and Joe Adcock. Here is Bob Aspromonte. His brother Ken was a manager. All right? Bob Aspromonte played for the Braves. And that's a great, I tell you, he wasn't the greatest of baseball players, but I do like, for whatever reason, I do like that baseball card. And the manager for the Colts was a fellow by the name of Harry Kraft. Now, Harry Kraft was his best season in baseball. He actually was able to amass a record of 360 and 485. His best season, though, came with the Kansas City Athletics when he went 73 and 81. And, of course, this is one of my favorite cards. I remember Harry Kraft, and I was telling I've told you before, there was a baseball book that my brother Ed had given me for Christmas one year. It was the Great American Baseball Card Collecting book. And in it was baseball cards from the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, early 70s, because the book came out about 1974. And anyway, what they would do, the authors were great baseball fans, loved baseball fans, and did what kids in the 50s and 60s did, and that was every spring through summer they would collect baseball cards. But this was one of the funniest books I've ever read, ever. And it's not just in sports, because the authors took baseball cards, just like kind of I do here, but they did little essays on the players, kind of like what I do, but where I'm kind of serious and definitely not humorous, these guys had some witty essays that were comical. And Harry Kraft happened to be one of their targets in the book. And it always looks like, I think the author said in this picture, it always looks like he's hollering as if to say, someone get him out of there. I look at him and it looks like he's either hollering or giving the sting signal with the nose, or he's maybe ordering a hot dog or a cup of coffee. But that baseball book, I will do that on a future show, where it's just a great baseball book. They took old cards like I did, and they had little essays about each and every card. It's a really great tribute to growing up in the 50s and 60s and being an innocent kid who just followed baseball and rode their bikes and played baseball in the sandlots and just hung out on their back porch on summer nights, listening to the ball games on the radio, or just playing all kinds of card games or board games, etc. Very, very nostalgic book. Anyway, here is, again, Tommy Aaron. I will tell you this. I don't know what's worse. Aaron had a negative 2.8 WAR for his career. I don't know whether he really, truly got a shot. And I'm going to say this. Maybe because he was Aaron's brother, maybe he got a good look. But maybe because he was Aaron's brother, he got a bad look. Because maybe the scouts and the managers were expecting Hank Aaron. And when they saw that maybe Tommy wasn't as good as a player, rather than, as Earl Weaver might say, don't tell me what he can't do, tell me what he can do. Looking at some of the things like his big year where he actually got maybe a real look. He played 141 games. He had 8 homers, 38 RBIs, hit .231. But here's the thing. He actually drew 41 walks. Now, I'm not saying those are all-star numbers, but the following year, the Braves cut his playing time in half. And obviously, he only hit a home run, 15 RBIs, and he only hit 200. But his production declines. He's sent to the minor leagues, comes back up in 65 late, only gets 8 games. In 68, after 2 more years in the minors, he plays 98 games, has a home run, 25 RBIs, hit .244. But again, to me, he has 21 walks. Now, what am I saying here? He's another guy that if we looked at him, you might have said, hey, you know what? He might be a player that a Weaver could have used and inserted against left-handed batters or used in particular roles. And maybe he would have, let's say, playing part-time, let's say 80 games, giving you 12 homers and 40 RBIs. And if you paired him with another outfielder or a first baseman, now you got, and that other player did basically the same thing. You've got 25 homers, 80 RBIs. Weaver did that in 79. All right. Benny Alaya, John Lowenstein. He had 3 guys playing left field. He had Singleton, of course, in right. Bumpry, I believe, in center. But he had three guys, and they basically gave him like 30 homers and 100 RBIs, all playing part-time, but doing what Weaver asked him to do. And I'm always wondering whether he was the same. All right. But we'll never know. As it is, Aaron finished up with 13 homers in his 7-year career, hit .229, and actually had 86 walks, all right, for his career. So his on-base percentage goes up to .292. All right, here are two great players, one a Hall of Famer. Adcock didn't realize this, finished his career basically with the Los Angeles Angels or the California Angels. And Eddie Matthews, of course, I always forget this, he finished his final year with the 68 Detroit Tigers. So he got into one more World Series. Matthews, of course, hit 512. Why am I showing me? I should be showing these guys. Adcock, of course, is famous for hitting 4 home runs in a game. Matthews, of course, anchored third base for the Braves for many years. Matthews would also manage. He would go on and manage 3 years, I believe, and he did it all with the Atlanta Braves. He went 149 and 161. He was during those late years. He had Hank Aaron late in his career, going for the home run record. He just, I think, is manager when Ted Turner comes on board, no pun intended, and of course that changes everything. Matthews, 149 and 161. When you think about it, he's 14 and 16, 7 and 8, close to 500. Who knows if he had gotten maybe another shot with another team? Could he have done something? And, kind of like a Joe Torre, gets a couple of runs and then you find room for him somewhere else. Okay, there is another guy I wanted to bring up, and this is pretty funny. He's actually in both pictures here. You can see him on the bottom here. He becomes a future coach, and that's by the name of Bob Lillis. Now, Lillis played for the Colt 45s. Ready for this? Lillis is a future manager, and he is playing shortstop that night and goes 1 for 3. Actually, he had a double off Bob Shaw. Lillis, I remember and recall as being a manager for the Astros. He actually is over 500. I think he won like 85 games as his high point for the Astros in the 80s, early 80s. But he compiles a record of 276 and 261, Bob Lillis. And like I said, he was with Preston Gomez. You know, the funny thing is, I'm looking at Preston Gomez. He's one of those guys that probably could have been a really good manager had he been given a good team. He always seemed to wind up with not just mediocre teams, but terrible teams that he almost had to build himself, and was never around for the fruition for those teams getting better. All right. Have to give up Bertie Tibbetts, or Tebbetts, who was the manager of the Braves. Tebbetts, of course, he was called Bertie because he had an extremely high voice. Apparently, it's funny. If you ever seen the movie Patton, that George C. Scott, I believe he wins the Oscar in that, but he's got a real powerful voice. And apparently, George Patton, the real general, had a very high-pitched voice. There's only one other guy I was always surprised when I was a kid when I saw this, and that was Frank Robinson. He always had like a high voice. I always thought it was from yelling and screaming so much that his voice was just permanently sore, like he had laryngitis all the time. But Bertie Tibbetts had probably was seen as one of the higher voices in the league. Tibbetts was 748 and 705 for his career. He managed a number of teams. He won a high of 91 games with the Cincinnati Reds in 1956. That year with the Braves, he led them to a 5th place finish. He does, and this is interestingly enough, he's with the Indians, but I love this little banner down here. It's with the Indians with the crown. And this is not a 1955 baseball card. This is from the 60s. So I guess the Indians or Topps really lived off that 1954 pennant for the Indians and let it go into the 1960s. I have to find out more about that. The fellow next to him, Met fans should know who he is, Roy McMillan. And McMillan actually managed the Mets for 50 some odd games when Yogi was fired in 1975. He actually didn't do a bad job. He was 25 and 27. But I wish I had another picture of him because, I blew up this picture. Roy McMillan, in my mind, and this is what I'm saying, he doesn't look anywhere near a shortstop, especially on the major league level. If anything, he looks like a high school chemistry teacher or maybe a philosophy professor in college. Nowhere does it look like he is a major league shortstop in that picture. And then, of course, I do think I have one more picture. No, maybe I am done. I would like to finish with this one, though. You know, I look at these guys and I say to myself, wow, you know, these were the embodiment of power hitters way back in the 50s. And I guess this is what my whole cartoon was about today. Too often the game has become, and you've heard me complain about this before, it's like just a backyard wiffle ball game where it's a strikeout, a walk, or a home run. These two players could hit home runs. They also could draw walks. And they also hit for a decent average. Yeah, they weren't 350 hitters. They weren't lifetime 300 hitters like Mays and Aaron. But they were premier players. And they could do, maybe they couldn't run, but they could hit. They could play their positions well. Maybe you could say they were 4 of 5-star tool players, but they were great players in their day. And I wish we had more players like this. Yeah, they drew the walks, but they could hit for average as well. My complaint. And we'll get into that next week as we talk about the World Series. This is Will O'Toole thanking you again for joining me. This is the Astros against the Braves and their very first game, 1962, and the box score from that. I hope you join me next week. Shout out to Howard Fredericks once again. Have a great week, everyone. See you next time.